Hello, welcome. What is the most important concept to understand in money and wealth creation? You could argue there are many important concepts, but most people, including me, would say understanding and utilizing compounding is that key concept. So what is compounding? Why is it so important? And how can you take advantage of it? These are some of the key questions that I'll discuss today, and stick around to the end as I identify some truly fascinating numbers for you to remember to help build financial security for you and or your children. So let's get into it. Remember when you were in school, perhaps some of you watching this still are in school, and your math teacher tried to teach you about something called exponential growth or an exponential curve. So while I think schooling is massively neglecting financial education for most of us around the world, hence the reason for this channel, understanding exponential growth might be the most important concept to understand in money and wealth creation that we are actually taught about in schools. So for those of you currently sort of scratching your head, wondering what is exponential growth, it is the magical growth which affects both the natural world in things like the spread of a virus. Remember the rapid spread of COVID, or maybe you don't want to remember that, or population growth. But most importantly for this channel, obviously, is its magical power for investment returns. Said another way, it is growth on growth on growth on growth on growth on growth, which means the rate of change becomes more and more dramatic over time, creating a J-shaped curve. So why is exponential growth so relevant for investment returns? It is because the concept of this video is compounding, and compounding is an exponential concept. That is, when your little money soldiers go out there working for you and bring back more money soldiers, and then they go out and bring back more money soldiers, and then they go out and bring back more and more and more, that's what we're looking for. So I'll explain this in another way. Imagine you wanted $1 million by the time you get to 65 years old, which is typical retirement age. If you started to save when you were 20 years old, you would need to save just over $6 every day. And how much would you have to actually contribute over those 45 years from age 20 to 65? Well, due to the magic of compounding, your personal contributions are just $100,000. Over those 45 years, split into those $6 amounts, you would therefore make $900,000 for free in growth, and most importantly, growth on growth on growth. That is why compounding is magic. And for all parents watching, or future parents watching, how much would you need to contribute at the birth of each child to give them $1 million at retirement age? Just over $1 a day. So you could, in theory, start them off by contributing $1 a day, and when they get to 25 or thereabouts, they could continue contributing $1 a day for their own retirement, and by the time they get to 65, they then have $1 million for retirement. And by contrast, if you were to up that $1 to $6, by the time they got to retirement age, they would have $5 million. $6 a day for their entire life until they're 65. Now, all of these examples are assuming 8% annual growth compounded daily, which is obviously a great return considering interest rates where they are, but somewhat conservative in a growth asset like the S&P 500, which I've talked about before, which has actually returned around 12% annually when you're reinvesting dividends over the past 50 years. Although if you adjusted for inflation, then 8% compounded is actually a better reference return for purchasing power. That said, if we therefore assume a 12% return, the daily contribution drops to just 15 cents per day for $1 million. And at just $1 saved per day from birth to 65, you would have a staggering $7.5 million at retirement age. And $1 a day contributed over 65 years is actually a total contribution of just $24,000. So over those 65 years, you're contributing $1 a day, 12% return, you're going to get $7.5 million at retirement age. Therefore, you've only actually put away $24,000 a day, but due to the magic of compounding, you've actually gained 7.475 million for free. This is the concept of today's video. It's a rather simple concept for some, but for others, emphasizing it in this way should hopefully help point out the seriousness and the importance of this concept. So what is the missing piece of this puzzle that I have not clearly highlighted yet? Well, hopefully many of you have guessed already. It is time. Compounding's magic is truly highlighted by time, but it is also built on rate of return, as I've mentioned, and the compounding frequency. So allow me to explain these concepts further. Going back to our early examples, if you start investing for retirement, aiming to save 1 million, and you only start when you get to the age of 40 instead of when you were born or at 20, as I've highlighted already, you would need to save almost $35 a day and therefore contribute over $300,000 in total contributions over the following 25 years. So therefore, 3 times as much from your pocket compared to starting at age 20, where we had 100,000 from age 20 to 65, so those 45 years. You now have to put in 300,000 from age 40 to 65 over those 25 years to end up with the same amount at the same return, the same compounding frequency, etc., etc. i.e. just changing the time means you have to add an extra $200,000 of your own money. Now, if we go into the compounding frequency concept, if interest is only paid monthly, or worst, only paid yearly, or if your returns are only compounded yearly, depending on which asset you use, we'll reference interest here because that's the easiest to understand, then your returns can be significantly affected. I'll put up a table and you can see, back to our $1 million example, starting when you or your baby is born, showing compounding monthly versus daily nets around $17,000 less, not the end of the world. And yearly versus daily yields around $180,000 less, as highlighted in green. So be sure to ensure your returns are compounded as frequently as possible, just like they are automatically in something like an S&P 500 index tracker. The ETF trackers I've already mentioned, like SPY or VOO. Now, I hope this makes sense for everyone. Comment below if you would like me to explain anything further. But as you can see, just over $1 a day from birth requires a total savings contribution of a little under $30,000 over 65 years. Compared to starting at 40 years of age, you need to contribute $35 a day and a total contribution of savings of over $300,000. So about 10 times as much, which is quite a big difference just by starting earlier. So what this table also shows you, it may be worth pausing the video here, is you can see the daily amount you would need to save from whatever age you currently are to get to retirement with $1 million. Here's another table comparing the $1 million retirement target to if you started with $5,000 invested up front. You basically do not need to contribute anything, which may make you ask the question, how much do you need to start with to get to $1 million after 65 years without any more contributions? That number is $5,520 at 8%. So if you started at birth, you put $5,520 aside, growing 8% compounded, i.e. in the index tracker, you would get $1 million and not have to contribute another dollar. That's a pretty magical number and a pretty magical concept. You could simply do that and your children would be miles ahead of most. Here's another table having a $5 million retirement target. And this time, comparing it to starting with $10,000 invested at the beginning, you can see the huge impact that extra $10,000 at the beginning makes. And now I bet some of you are asking what that magical upfront amount would be if you were earning the average 12% S&P 500 return. Meaning if you invest just this amount at the birth of each of your children into the S&P 500, and the S&P 500 continues to return 12% per year, by the time they reach 65, they will have $1 million. How much do you think that amount would be? Please guess. It is under $500 upfront. It is obviously worth saying that with inflation, sadly $1 million by then is unlikely worth as much as $1 million today is. So in real terms, you might not be able to buy as much. But how about we say $5 million? Before I say it, please do guess, as I'm confident you'll be amazed, how much you would need to invest at the birth of each of your children for them to each have $5 million at age 65 for their retirement. Just a one-time amount. It is just over $2,000, the price of a MacBook or a laptop or 2 iPhones. So $2,050 to be more precise. I know that may be a lot for many, but it is certainly not talking the 1% of society kind of numbers. So it is far lower than I assume most of you guessed. It is basically the price, as I've said, of a new iPhone or 2 or a laptop. So just consider that. And just in case you think 5 million is not enough, how about we do the same guess for $10 million? Please do guess, as it helps with the learning and highlighting this really is magic. Just over $4,000, $4,102 to be precise. So if you can find just a few $1,000s at the birth of your children and invest it in a low-cost S&P 500 index tracker, reinvesting all dividends that come every quarter typically, then by the time they come to retirement age, they will have millions to rely on. This really is the magic of compounding your returns combined with time. And if you simply wish to get your children off to a good start for college or to buy a car or a deposit for a house, that same $4,102 invested at birth would have grown to around $35,000 by the time they're 18 years old, which is obviously nothing like $10 million by the age of 65. But this is the magic of compounding. With more time, the returns really grow exponentially. But if you wanted your children to have, say, $200,000 by the time they're 18, to have a great start on paying for college or a house deposit or a car or whatever, you would need to invest how much? You would need to invest $25,000 at birth in a low-cost S&P 500 index tracker, then let the magic of compounding work. Or if $25,000 upfront is too much, with regular contributions, you can start with $10,000 at birth and add $40 a week until they're 18, which is just $2,080 per year. Not insignificant, but also not completely out of reach. Price of 2 iPhones again, if we're measuring everything in iPhones today, which would be total contributions of about $37,500, including the initial $10,000 up front. And this is the power of compounding. By using growth assets and starting early, that $37,500, $10,000 at the beginning and $40 a week every week until they turn 18, gives them over $200,000 by the time they're 18 to go and build a life. That is such a springboard. That is probably a 1% of society springboard for an 18-year-old to have effectively college paid for, have a house deposit, a car, etc. Right? This is a really, really simple concept. Now, obviously, you don't need to do these exact numbers. They're just highlighted for examples. But the examples are worth really taking note of. Finally, showing this in a graph to hopefully make it easy. As you can see from the following chart, back to the $1 million example, keeping it simple, the red line shows your total contributions, just $30,000 over 65 years. The blue line shows your annual return earned each year if you were to withdraw that return, say the dividends or the interest or whatever else your return is. So instead of reinvesting your returns, so instead of taking advantage of the magic of compounding, what is that beautiful green line showing us then? The magical exponential J-curve is just beautiful, right? The green line shows you the total value if you reinvested the interest earned, and therefore you start to earn interest on interest on interest on interest on interest on interest, or growth on growth on growth on growth. This is the magic of compounding. So when you leave your dividends in there to get dividends, they give you more dividends. If you leave your interest in there or rental income or whatever asset you're using, you're getting growth on growth on growth, meaning your newly earned money soldiers, your interest, go back to work for you and earn you more money soldiers. So the overwhelming key is to start as early as possible with as much as possible upfront. Then compound your returns. In other words, keep your returns, your dividends, your interest, etc., reinvesting, and happily ride the beautiful exponential return curve. This is what I'm trying to point out today. This is why I think this is one of the best concepts in money. So that's the key concept for today's video. Perhaps a little basic for some, but then it's just a great reminder of one of the fundamentals. And for others, this is one of the most foundational concepts to embrace in all of investing. Compound, start early, pick a growth asset. So that's it. Please subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, as many more to come. And consider watching some of my other content, which will pop up here, I think, shortly. The preceding content is informational only and based on information available when created. It is not an offer or solicitation, nor is it tax or legal advice. It does not consider your financial circumstances and objectives and may not be suitable for you.